Braun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Newman, I was listening. My first question was going to be about how do we do this between the federal government and state and local governments. You cited that already some of the lower levels of government have gotten out there. I think you made it clear that you think we need some template here that will be the general framework. Is that, in a nutshell, what you said earlier?
It is, Ranking Member Braun. The companies that want to use this are being faced with a vexing and increasing patchwork of state and local laws, some of which are promulgated by folks who are less than informed on the technology, the upside risks, and the downside risks. This is creating a lot of headwinds for those who want to innovate, those who want to responsibly deploy, and those who want to make sure, as the fellow folks here testifying, want to make sure this is done responsibly. And I'm anti-regulation by DNA, but this is an area where I think the federal government ought to act responsibly and prudently and occupy the field so there is a uniform set of rules to do this responsibly that large and small companies alike can draw from and make sure they're on the right side of the compliance line while innovating. You
referenced something that's in the House currently. How long has that been there? Was it in the last Congress, or did it originate in this Congress?
So it made it to a discussion draft bill, not a formal numbered bill, and it was in the 2018 Congress. I think that was the 118th Congress.
You mean the last Congress?
Yes.
That was 117th.
117th, yes,
okay.
Sir.
So it made it to that point. Any other formality on legislation that you're aware of?
There's a bunch kicking around, but no.
I think Senator Hickenlooper and I will take a look at that. You talked about the downside risks. I'm going to call it the nefarious use of AI. Could you give me your top three biggest concerns, both domestically and internationally, in terms of what that might be in the time you've been looking at this?
In the employment context or general?
I'm talking more broadly here now.
Yes, I think AI could be used nefariously and will be by state actors to influence domestic issues. I think there will be a lot of fakes, voice and image. I think AI will be used to interfere with our elections and promulgate cyber attacks. Those are the most national security points of concern, in my view, X the workplace.
I'm glad you got it on record, because we hear a lot about it, and a lot of times it's just referred to generally. Thank you. Ms. Morley Ryan, intrigued me. You work for Accenture. That you mentioned in workforce is such a big deal in a place like Indiana. We've got inherently low unemployment rates. We have half our counties that are trying to find their next act. That idea of getting better skills while you're in the place where everyone goes to school, K through 12. How do you see that? And I thought you mentioned that you're going to have entry-level positions in your own company that don't require a 4-year degree. Is that true? And would you elaborate on that?
Yes, thank you, Senator Braun. Yes, we have multiple ways to come into Accenture. To your point, half of our entry-level positions, or almost half of our entry-level positions, do not require a 4-year degree. Currently, yep. And we hire 20% of our entry-level positions through our apprentice program across North America. We have had 2,000 apprentices since 2016. We also do a bunch around apprentice networks across the country. We don't have one in Indiana yet, but Chicago was our founding apprentice network, where we encourage other employers to join us in building apprentice work and learn programs. Additionally, from an access and on-ramp perspective, we work with nonprofits and other organizations to provide our perspective on technology and AI fluency to inform how they're developing their learning and training programs.
You mentioned, too, that you were going to increase. How many employees does Accenture have currently?
We have 733,000 employees globally.
Okay, and you mentioned going from 40 to 80,000.
Yes, sir.
Particularly aimed at an AI focus?
Yes, sir. Data and AI.
So you're going to bump it 5 to 10% of total employment on that. And again, a large percentage of those will be, if you come out of high school with the right aptitude, you could come and apply for a job and get one.
Yes, assuming that there openings and all that sort
Sure.
of thing. But yes, and I think
that's an amazing statistic from a company like Accenture that I would have just assumed it would have taken a 4-year degree. My daughter actually worked there for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Now in the company that I built, she and her 2 brothers are running it. But I think that's something we need to shout out more.
Yeah.
College educations are getting so expensive. The stat that I see is only 35% of the jobs actually require it. It's generally in technical or professional training. I think it is neat that you're doing that in a way that, to me, then emphasizes how important that K through 12 education is in teaching real life skills for a multitude of uses once you graduate from high school. I'll yield back.
Senator Casey.
Mr. Chairman, thanks very much. Before I start my questions, I wanted to ask unanimous consent that a statement be entered to the record. It's from Matthew Shearer, entitled "The Promise and the Peril of AI in the Workplace." It's dated today. I'd ask consent to make that part of the record.
Without objection.
Thanks very much. As Congress considers artificial intelligence and the future of work, it's critical that we focus on workers' voices and ensure that workers have a seat at the table when policies are made and decisions are made being made that impact workplaces excuse me, in such a significant way. As the power imbalance in workplaces continues to grow, employers are increasingly willing to use workplace technologies like AI, as well as invasive surveillance technologies that will allow them to track workers almost like pieces of equipment. Decisions are being made solely by employers without consultation or input from workers, and that's why I've introduced several bills aimed at creating a much needed set of rules, standards, protections, and oversight to counter the risks of workplace technologies that are spreading unchecked. This July, I introduced the No Robot Bosses Act, it's Senate Bill 2419, which aims to regulate the potential risks and use of AI in the workplace. This bill would add protections for job applicants and employees related to automated decision systems and would require employers to disclose when and how these systems are being used. It would also create guardrails around how AI can manage workers. A second bill, by way of example, is the Stop Spying Bosses Act. This is Senate Bill 262 that I introduced in February to require disclosures and prohibitions for employers engaging in surveillance of workers. American workers are the backbone of our country, and they deserve to be treated with basic dignity at work. I'm hopeful that these bills and other actions that we take will help empower and protect workers, and I'll continue to fight for those protections and rights. Mr. Newman, I just have a question for you. Do you agree that the rise of AI has created both novel and unaddressed issues in the American workforce, and particularly with respect to both the autonomy of and the dignity of the American worker, and that it requires both study and appropriate rules of the road?
I agree with you 100%, Senator.
Thank you, and I hope we can work together on legislation and other policies that relate to workers. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. I'll give back all my time.
Great. Thank you. Senator Budd.
Chairman, thank you. And I thank the panel for being here today. Mr. Landon, whether businesses are aware of it or not, many of these existing services that they use, I mean, it's had AI integrated into it for years, whether they knew that or not. But as this technology further develops and the public has greater access to tools like generative AI, how can businesses of all sizes best leverage this technology?
Thank you, Senator. And it is true that there has been a breakthrough around the use of artificial intelligence in the last year and sort of a greater awareness among people from all walks of life about what it means. And that's pervasive from the employers and workers that we talk to. I think it's paramount that businesses are very transparent with their efforts in this area. It's one of the reasons that we believe not only in putting in place risk-based frameworks, but sharing what we're doing as an industry is so important. We hear more and more an interest from people who are both workers at companies and employers in understanding exactly how we're employing AI and for what ends. And when we provide that level of transparency, and the more we can do that in a standardized way, to Mr. Newman's point, I think we'll get more confidence and trust built around the use of AI. And I think fundamentally that's what this is about. It's something new, and it's going to take time for people to build trust and confidence in these systems. And if you're not transparent with the ways that you're leveraging AI, you're not going to be successful in sort of getting people comfortable and getting the most out of this technology.
Workday is a very well-known company, but it's most thought of as more of enterprise level. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest for small businesses to more quickly adopt some of the AI?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. You know, in my experience, it's taking an open mind towards experimentation while having an eye towards risk. There are a lot of great resources. There are emerging skill sets around AI that are coming up. And as we've talked about so far in the testimony, availing yourself about the online resources around prompt engineering, responsible use of large language models are all really valuable frameworks. Mm-hmm. Just within our organization, we do a lot of pretty informal training on like how best to use AI technologies to make decisions, and just driving a conversation around that technology in the workplace really elevates the discussion and allows us to sort of embrace the technology. And we also sort of encourage like a skeptical attitude. So try things, try to break it, see if it really works in a practical sense, see if it has bias. And when you get comfort level with people using this technology, it's pretty amazing. And finally, I'll just say, like, watching my daughter go to school and come back using these tools in her classes, it's really interesting seeing in the last year professors switching to a mindset of like, we expect you to use these tools, just disclose that you're using them, explain how you're working with them. You know, don't just write the essay and pretend it's yours, like really use this in a meaningful way. And I think that principle holds for small businesses, large businesses as well.
That's helpful. Thank you. So in the coming years, AI regulation will present a difficult challenge to both Congress and to federal agencies. Already, the European Union has proposed regulations that would classify AI technology according to a 4-tier risk-based system. And California's governor has directed state agencies to examine and report on so-called high-risk applications of AI, including those that would cause workforce displacement. So I think that the federal government should really tread carefully when considering new regulations in any form, and I appreciate your sentiment and your DNA, Mr. Newman. And I think that's particularly true in such a cutting-edge industry. But Mr. Newman, what impacts could these early attempts at regulation could they have on the very development of AI technology?
Well, I think we're seeing it in the state and local level and the patchwork of various approaches. It can be viewed as anti-innovative. It can raise the costs. It can fuel litigation. It can create barriers to responsible adoption. A lot of the developers are scratching their heads saying, what do I have to do in California? What do I have to do in New York City? Should we be in New York City if that's what we have to do? That's the opposite of what we want as a society. We want clarity, we want efficiency, we want fairness, we want rational regulation, and we're creating a hodgepodge of anti-competitive, anti-innovation, catch or catch can all over the country, and that isn't desirable to fuel innovation.
Thank you all again for being here. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. All right, Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for being here. At least 3 of you, Mr. Billingsley, Mr. Lannon, and Ms. Morley Ryan, your testimony is really focused on workforce issues. Mr. Newman, you really get into how to conceive of the regulatory challenge, not that you ignore the workforce issues, but I really want to focus on the workforce side. And maybe I'll use, Mr. Lannon, your written testimony. We believe a shift to a skills-based approach to talent is the best way forward. But by a skills-based approach to talent, we mean an emphasis on what a person can do or learn rather than solely on their credentials. I kind of read Mr. Billingsley's testimony about the need to over-index investment in education and training in communities representing people of color. Ms. Morley Ryan, you talking about Accenture's apprenticeship programs and some of the things you're doing. Okay, how do we deal with the workforce, and how do we look at what it is to be educated and ready to succeed in an AI-dominant economy? We are woefully behind in a number of the policies we have at the federal level. Senator Braun and I are co-sponsors of a bill that has now been pending before the Senate for 9 years. The bill would do something really radical. It would allow Pell Grants to be used for career and technical training and not just college. It has virtually a zero cost. It has had about 60 members of the Senate currently serving as co-sponsors at one time or another. It's gotten close to being passed, but there always seems to be something in the way. Most recently, we had it on the list for a markup in committee, but there were 2 other bills being marked up that day that were controversial, and so the entire markup was pulled down. And what we expected was going to be essentially a voice unanimous vote from the committee never happened. It's not yet been scheduled for another markup. Meanwhile, all of my employers are telling me they're having a hard time hiring people. We just did a manufacturing bill, who's going to make it? We just did an infrastructure bill, who's going to build it? You've testified that significant percentages of your employees don't need college degrees. And yet we offer to families whose kids want to go to college or whose parents want their kids to go to college a significant financial entitlement and incentive they can count on in a Pell Grant. But for a family that wants to have a youngster in Tulsa, for example, master skills to be an AI professional decades forward that doesn't require a college degree, we don't necessarily provide easily accessible financial aid for that family or for that student. Just seems to me to be a no-brainer, And I agree with you, Mr. Lannon. We really are moving to sort of skills rather than credentials. Now, sometimes the best credentials are a validator of skills. So somebody who can pass the American Welding Society certification exam, they can take that anywhere in the country, and they may not know what the name of the high school you attended or what college you went to, but they know what an AWS certification is. So a credential can often be a validation of the skills or the validation of your ability to succeed in this area. But I just would like to throw it open to you. You know, we're the HELP committee. We set federal education policy, including how we incentivize students and their families to learn. I think we ought to incentivize college attendance, but I don't think we should suggest that college is the only way for somebody to successfully learn and be productive in this economy. And I would just love any of your comments on that.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Couldn't agree more. And I hope that with the looming transformation of AI, it could be used as impetus for taking action now at a congressional level. And I would just say, like Accenture, you know, we have had a lot of success with our Opportunity On-Ramp program at Workday, where 20% of our hires this year in early and mid-stage careers will come from a program that works with nonprofits to provide skill-based training for people at Workday, 4 to 6 month internships that are paid, transitioning to full-time hires at our company. People don't have to come from a background where they've had the opportunity to get a college degree, or maybe they're midlife and they are a veteran, or they're coming as a caregiver. And, you know, just having that skills-based orientation and mindset is so beneficial to us as an organization. And I do think we share that with my other panelists.
Absolutely. So I would draw a parallel between something that we're actually doing in Tulsa. We're trying to tackle a similar issue as it relates to, you know, the cybersecurity industry. And we have some non-traditional programs like the Cyber Skills Center that offers a 6-month boot camp that we then use to connect people to apprenticeships within companies so that they can grow and be groomed and then get full-time employment. We should see something similar as it relates to the infrastructure around education and certification with artificial intelligence. But another thing we should consider is community-wide, use case training. One of the best ways for people to understand the power of artificial intelligence, specifically in different areas of the workforce, is for them to get hands-on experience seeing how effective it can be as a co-pilot for them. So one of the things that we've worked on designing in partnership with Seed AI, how do you go into a community and take some critical areas, workforce areas, and get the community to use, whether they be not just chatbots, but other forms of AI as co-pilots, whether it be in creative expression, grant writing, community development, social and criminal justice. We can provide real-world examples of how people can use AI to enhance, and improve their output in their career. That's a perfect way to get initial exposure before you plug them into an actual preset infrastructure.
Yes, and I echo again my fellow panelists here. I think what you're speaking to, Mr. Billingsley, is also just this overall technology and AI fluency that we need to be driving at the broadest level. And I think that starts at the K-12, sort of exposing people not only to the careers, which I think has been discussed quite a bit, but the technology in the context that it's a treat, to your point, Senator Hickenlooper, at the beginning, and not a trick, right? We want people to see what the value is for them within their own context, within their own sort of incentives and environment. And that comes back, I think, to what everybody has said so far today, which is centering the human or the person as a part of this conversation. So to your question on sort of workforce preparedness, Accenture is very much in line with you around providing opportunities, whether it's not a degree program or even a credential, but really driving technology and AI fluency in a variety of ways, which could be through work-based learning, it could be through a credential program or a 2 or 4 year degree, or it could candidly continue to just be on the job or within their K-12 education. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. I yield back.